Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Brian Winnekins from the NAFB Convention in Kansas City. Thank you to our broadcast sponsors, including Alcivia Co-op, Osteoplastics, the Animal Wellness Center of Buffalo Valley, also Compeer Financial and Synergy Co-op. And speaking of Compeer Financial, joining us, John Monson. He's with Compeer Financial. He is the Chief Mission and Marketing Officer. We've talked with John about some of the things with assisted living in small communities and some of the ways Compeer Financial is helping out with that. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we need to do to get ready for 2023. And don't forget, chat with the staff over at Compeer Financial, Mondovi and Arcadia as well. They can help you out. Also Baldwin, too. And, John, thanks for joining us this morning. Okay, we are getting ready for 2023. I know some folks are still getting the crop off for this year, but we do have to start thinking about next year. What should we be thinking about?
Well, input costs, I think, are the big side of things that we want to care about. Crop insurance and those USDA programs, to put it in a nutshell. So working with USDA, making sure that we understand all of those FSA programs is important. Making sure that we're talking to our crop insurance agent, talk to Compeer, like you just said. Go to the Mondovi office, Arcadia office, Baldwin office. I think you can get your assistance there, and they can guide you. Making sure that our input costs are controlled. I think as we look at the next year, there's going to be a lot of volatility. We don't know what's happening with China. We don't know what's happening in Ukraine, and we don't know what's going to be happening with inflation and interest rates over the course of next year. We have some ideas. We've seen inflation increase. We've seen that the interest rates are increasing as well. No stop to it in the near future that we can see, but of course, it's important to be able to talk to your Compeer, financial officer to be able to guide you through a lot of these decisions. And we'll focus on you. We'll focus on your operation and make sure that your needs are met first. That's the place to start, I would say, and just to focus forward in making sure that everything is understood well, documented if it can be, and then we'll focus forward. For those in your area that I think are on the farm, that have their own feed, that's going to be a real advantage as we look forward for the next year. Prices look decent, I think, as we look forward as well. The future prices look good across the board on grain, whether it's dairy, swine, you name it. We've done relatively well this last year. Let's hope for some rain, and then things I think hopefully will improve a little bit. So. But so far so good, I think, and as we look for 2023, talk to your Compeer financial officer.
You know, you mentioned those input costs. That is really going to be the wild card because, I mean, there's so many things with this that could affect the costs. And, if folks can get some stuff booked in advance, now's a good time to do that.
Well, that's the key, and that's why I say talk to your financial officer now and take a look at those costs as we speak and making sure that you're locking that in if you can. As soon as you possibly can. But I think staying on top of it, if you haven't in the past really focused on it, now's the time to start. And so I think that'll be a real key advantage as we look at 2023.
Talking with John Monson, Chief Mission and Marketing Officer with Compeer Financial this morning. In agriculture, there's been a lot of talk about sustainability and what that means. But on the financing side and the finance side of agriculture, at least with Compeer, rural vitality. And kind of like sustainability in agriculture. Okay, so rural vitality, what does that mean?
Good question. When we look at agriculture, it's very dependent on rural communities. Rural communities are really dependent on agriculture, especially where we live. In outskirts Minnesota or in rural Wisconsin, rural Illinois, we're very dependent on a strong agricultural industry. And I've lived in a rural town, small town, my entire life and been working in it 37 years now. And as I look at that, understanding what's happening in these rural communities is critical. So what's been happening in rural communities that matter now? Why is it different? Housing is a real problem. Infrastructure is a real problem. Do we have daycare locally? Do we have the workforce that we need? And is that workforce ready to be able to do the work that we need as we look forward? Is rural health care addressed in our rural communities? Do we have availability of a local pharmacy even in some communities? No, we don't. So we have to be able to work as closely as we can in understanding our partners there in these rural communities, investing alongside our community banks. Compeer and community banks working together to invest in the local community. I think that's a new avenue we need to explore better, where we're working more closely together. So I think we need to learn more about what the communities needs, what are their challenges, what are their opportunities, what are some of the threats that we see there, and invest in them, best that we can as we look forward. We'll do that in 2023 as hard as we can and begin making investments in pilots to learn better about how we can make a difference, but make a meaningful difference.
And so with these pilot programs and that, how is that going to work? And for folks in a Durand or Mondovi or Plum City, Elma, Pepin, how can they maybe become a part of these programs?
So, first thing I think we need to do is invest in some pilots that tell us a little bit more about what the needs of those communities are. I'll give you one example. One of the projects that we're focused on right now really focuses on entrepreneurialism in a rural community. A lot of these businesses that want to come into your town don't know who to contact. They don't know what resources are available. They can't find bridge loans in order to make their financing needs work. They don't know what the labor force looks like. They can't find housing anywhere. So we can pilot this to understand how some communities have gotten through that. We can also pilot to understand what those needs are better. And then we can also talk to our regulator and say, hey, these are needs that we need to address along with our local nonprofit, private, and public partners to be able to address those needs in a way that we haven't before. And so once we learn from that, I think we then begin to broaden it out. We replicate, we scale it. And I think that's how we're thinking about it. So we're looking a lot at how we work with entrepreneurs in those cities because they touch so many of those issues. And when you invest in these guys and you provide the leadership in that community, it makes those communities thrive. We're going to bring some of our board of directors and some team leaders from our corporate giving team down to Lanesboro, Minnesota. It's a really small town of 800 people. And we're going to just sit and listen to them. We're going to learn from them in a few days. We go to each state each year, and we listen and we learn. We're going to do this year in Lanesboro, Minnesota, just to listen and learn and understand better. But their story is amazing, but their challenges are very real. And what can we do then to replicate those learnings in Arcadia, in Mondovi, in Durand, and across the territory of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota?
Tell you what, we'll invite you and the board to come to Durand here even this next few months. We'd love to have you come on up and talk with some of the business owners. I think you might be surprised at some of the things that not only the cities are trying to do, like Durand and Mondovi, to help mitigate some of these issues, but what some of the challenges are. We'd love to have you come on.
I'd love to do that. See, I'd like to spend a lot more time as well. One of the other areas I think of opportunity, Brian, that I think needs to be explored is we need to use our voice to influence outcomes better. What I mean by that is I think rural doesn't sometimes do enough to tell its story, but also to help people understand the needs around the issues that we just talked about, like the infrastructure challenges that we see and how aged it is and the implications of that. We talked about rural health care. And so I'd like to be able to start doing some town halls in some of these communities and understand better from all of them, what do you care about? What really needs to be addressed? And how do we begin to use Compeer's voice for them when we go out to Congress and we go out and see our regulator and be able to readdress them in a different way, in a better way than we have before. So we're open to coming anywhere we'd like. And I've thought an awful lot about you since we last talked about the communities that you serve and the communities that we serve together. And better understanding them and being able to help meet their needs in a different way. I'd be very interested in that.
Well, I'd love to have you. That is John Monson. He is Chief Marketing and Mission Officer with Compeer Financial from the NAFB Convention. I'm Brian Winnikins for WRDN.